content going to be covered today. So what I did for the presentation, I picked out the key elements. So those that will be relevant, for your perspective as an event planner, both for the group as well as the individual project, as well as stuff that you're going to see or that should be relevant on the quizzes, on the assignments, and all that stuff. So with that, so let me hit the record button and we will roll from there. So let me put this. Of course, got to sync my webcam. All right. So one of the big thing that we're going to really start off with this week is kind of picking, rolling with the momentum from module 2 in terms of advertising, promotions, and PR. Promotions and PR is a very specific area within the marketing realm, but also we're going to go, like I just said, to the specifics of contract considerations as well as risk management. So when I look at these 3 different angles of event management, chapter 7 is really a common thing that any event manager, any marketer, all business with athletic programs, schools, nonprofits, sports teams, this is something everyone does very actively and aggressively, and that's what you see as a consumer. But what's happening in chapter 8 and chapter 9 are items behind the scenes. So what you have to do in advance to make sure the event can actually happen, in more of the facility management angle on it. So to kick it off with chapter 7, the big focus is going to be on the areas of media promotion and media relations. So with media relations, media promotion is more of what we talked about last week in terms of those angles of marketing, giveaways, promotional sectors, generating awareness, while relation is more about building that brand, having that rapport, having that direct dialogue with the community. So media relations is where you could utilize radio as a business to promote the event. It's where you're using social media to engage directly with the fan. It's more of that interactive component, so the relationship, while promotion is more of the generation of awareness to get the brand name out there. And with this is where the promotional mix comes into play. So we talked about the marketing mix before, but the promotional mix is really where you're using those different elements of marketing to promote the event. So with your project that is due this coming week for part 3, you're kind of building a promotional mix, but there's different layers to it. Like you're going to do stuff with staffing as well. But when you think about what you want to accomplish this coming Sunday for part 3, make sure you are hitting on different angles. I'm not telling you to go, I'm not saying you have to do PR and personal selling and direct marketing and advertising, but speak to different areas that make sense for your event in both promotions as well as more of the traditional or integrated marketing realms. So with promotions and media relations, a big thing is the establishment of that, what we call a symbiotic relationship. So it is a direct connection, immersion between you and your partners. And compared to, you buying an advertisement in a magazine, like for that, you're just a client of the magazine and the magazine is just a vessel. But with the building of the relationships through sponsorships and media relations, or not media, for, these different engagement activities, you're more integrated in the activities and media space as the event manager, and they're more integrated in your event. So when you think about, just the layers of, like with the examples below, if you were to watch a Tigers game on Bally Sports, the new Fox Sports Detroit, they are harmonious with the way that they do everything in promotions. So for what the Tigers are actually producing and what the Tigers are sharing in terms of their content, it's aligning with what Bally's doing on their side through commercials and radio, compared to you just recognizing as a Tigers, hey, this, go watch the game on TV. Nope. a proud partner with Bali, a proud partner with, them and this, that, and whatever, in terms of, getting the airtime out there. So it is this two-way street, and that's what the symbiotic relationship means. With media relations, there's also 3 R's that are built into it. This is relating, retaining, and repairing. So a big factor, and really the core of media relations, is creating a message, creating a tone, creating a face that is actually connected with the community. That's where the brand building and awareness comes into play. And through that, once you get out there, once you get connected, is the importance of being able to retain the community. So with that comes elements of trust, elements of transparency. Consumers want to know what you're doing as an organization, and being able to keep a message out there to educate, to promote, that's key in the media relation realm. So this is where organizations create press releases, they share social media is really such a beautiful way to have those media relations and to retain, because you can easily put a post out there, connect to the audience that's looking to receive the content, and create that dialogue as you go. And it's nice that you can do that in, an immediate manner, compared to having to buy an ad, buy a promotion, do more of a traditional marketing activity to get the message out. But also with media relations, it's a great way that you can repair relationships, that you can put patches on things. So like if there was an ethical issue that happened, or, nowadays it seems like there's really one of the biggest things you hear about organizations doing is repairing once certain comments are made or certain decisions are made that not everyone in the community may be able to understand or comprehend, just based on everything going on in the world. So with that, repairing is a big, and very expensive area of media relations. So interesting story about my sister. So my sister she's a CEO of a public relations firm in Naperville, a Chicago suburb. But a few years back, she worked for a mega brand that did a lot of contract work for large organizations. So when she started, the very first project she had was with the organization, this organic, or I don't even know the appropriate terminology, this milk alternative thing that Coca-Cola bought. So right before the deal was final, they had this crazy ad campaign sexualizing women, and her first job is under Coca-Cola is, we gotta fix this. I mean, there is just such this media firestorm, but with that, in public relations, her role was to take this project, one, work with Coca-Cola and the entity that they were taking over to say, this, you guys got to change the way you're doing things, because me being here isn't going to fix it unless you guys fix this internally. Then they created adjusted campaigns, messages, tones. They actually, for a certain amount of sales, I believe they donated money to, groups at nonprofit organizations that I believe like victims of sexual abuse or something like that. So it's interesting how the role of repairing a relationship could come into play. In that example, even a big brand with Coca-Cola, for something that wasn't really even in their wheelhouse, it was a brand they purchased, something that they had to spend millions of dollars on just to get the product off the ground. So kind of an interesting story there. Then when, so we're talking about the promotions, media relations, and the promotional mix. And within the promotional mix, the book elaborates on the 10 Ps. Take a look at those. Those are important things to speak with, especially within your individual and group projects. But the 4 that I want to bring out are specific to media relations. That's positioning, promotion, placing, and promise. So as a real quick definition, the positioning is what you're doing to get in the mind of the consumer. So what media outlets are you doing? Are you using social media? Are you doing forms of TV advertising, whatever it is? The position is really the key element to get the ball rolling. Once you are connected, in those different forums, the application of the promotions are where you're really going to build momentum and generate awareness. As that strategy comes into play, then the placing element really helps target or narrow in on those different tactics. So compared to just saying, hey, we're utilizing social media, no, we're going to be placing this content at certain times of the day, doing boosted posts for X amount of people within a geographic vicinity that have these interests. Placing is really that very, 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 very strategic activity that falls within the promotional and advertising scope. And while the promise, that's really where you come back at this end at the end of the day, when you look at how you utilize media, where your outreach activities were, that's really where you come back and measure, what that return on investment is. Did it work? Didn't it? What do we have to do moving forward? And with promotion and, that path to evaluation, persuasion is really the key thing that you have to drive towards. So thinking about some of your individual projects, whether it is a golf outing or a competitive football event or a basketball tournament, whatever it is, how are you going to persuade people to participate? So this is where we have to have a strong understanding of our SWOT analysis. What is the unique opportunity that we can offer? What are our internal strengths? What are our challenges? That is an audit that you have to do internally, so you can then begin to tell the story to show off the uniqueness of your event, of your organization, of your location, and all that kind of stuff. And that's really where the creative realm of marketing comes into play. So as event managers, yeah, you have a lot on the administrative and decision-making side, but then when you look at many of these collegiate and major league sport organizations, they have entire marketing departments to deliver that message. So while you can do the back strategy of how to get there, there's always this harmonious relationship where the marketers are the aggressive ones going out there. Even looking in the community, if you were to host an event for the city of Jackson, yeah, you could work with the city manager and bring up this idea, but they need their own media relations department to spread that message. So making sure that the goals that you're looking to accomplish administratively are aligning with the different partners you have. You might not even be the one creating that message in many of these situations. But with that, kind of went off random there. But that's where the omnichannel marketing really hits. And this is where you're taking those different approaches. Another way to think about this is those integrated marketing communication paths through traditional media, to flyers, to TV interviews, to social media. This is where you're going to be identifying what makes the most sense. What's our budget? What are the goals? And what vessels are we going to use to distribute that information and engage with the audience? This is all critical in terms of, the basics of event management and marketing. You got to captivate the audience, and it takes different methods to do that. And that is where the beauty of social media comes into play. So not sure what all platforms you're on, but I mean, we've seen a significant emergence on sites such as TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat for business marketing, Facebook, Twitter, phenomenal vessels in terms of that word of mouth sharing. But really, all of them create those different platforms so you can easily get content out there. Word will travel quickly, and then you can really cost effectively engage with a mega audience and save thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on that advertising and marketing expense sheet. So within social media, just some of the benefits just to really consider. And if you're utilizing social media in your individual projects, these are things to think about and maybe verbalize in your different paths to building that marketing plan this coming week. But like I said, it's cheap. You can get by and never have to pay for a post. If you do pay for the Jackson, Hillsdale, Lenawee area, it is insanely cheap. I mean, not many businesses pump big dollars into this community. So you can get by with very cost-effective ad buys to get that where you pay for every 1,000 impressions, where you do a boosted promoted post. The growing trend of those paid partnerships that you're seeing for that co-branding symbiotic relationship element. Those are all cost-effective routes to go compared to, having that real expensive TV commercial. Reach, you can really reach whoever you want based on, building your following. And with that, the ability to connect is there as well. We already talked about timeliness, flexibility to change, adapt, edit, update posts compared to just putting a flyer on the wall. You can be share just in time updates with your audience to make sure that they're educated and bought in along the way. This also offers a range of promotional opportunities. You could have, so let's say you do create posters, billboards, flyers. If there's QR codes, you can drive them back to your social media site for surveys, polls, contests, whatever it is. Do that same stuff online. Word of mouth, just a quick like. If I'm liking something, my friends that I engage with regularly are going to see that as well. If I share it, they're definitely going to see it. If I comment on it, they're going to see it as well. The way that, why am I drawing a blank on the word, but the algorithms of social media work, if you're connected with people, you're going to start seeing the same or the stuff that they do. The more you click on them, the more you're going to see of them. So this is a great way that you can really get the information out there to people with like minds and pump it out at an effective rate. It's web traffic, branding opportunities. This is where hashtags, influencers come into play, but also something to think about. Social media has become a very common platform for hiring and for recruitment. So for everyone on this call, if you're interested in careers in sport management, like I saw the Lugnuts, the West Michigan Whitecaps, I believe the Great Lakes Loons, all these organizations post their jobs on Facebook. So it's an easy way, or Facebook, LinkedIn, all the different sites, easy way to find that information. LinkedIn is imperative to have. So I don't know if you have a LinkedIn account, but LinkedIn is a great way to get connected with professionals in the field. A lot of businesses use those accounts to promote opportunities. So if you're interested in a specific sport organization, sport media company, even something unrelated to sports, LinkedIn is a great site to utilize to discover those opportunities with ease compared to you having to do the hard work behind the scenes digging for everything. But also with social media and just media relations as a whole, it's a great way to collect that information. Facebook, you can easily track information and the trends of consumers, but also create forums to gather responses. A lot of businesses do post communities or group pages. So compared to just posting a single event or having a open corporate page, maybe have a group for your fans. That way you as the event manager can, filter the comments. So if someone had a miserable experience, that's something you could let go through. I'm like, all right, this is a talking point. But if they're coming out slanderous to you as an event manager, the product, the business, you can still block it and have that control. So, groups on these different social media sites are nice ways to have that discussion and figure out how things are going. So with that, we could talk a lot more about the realm of media relations, but wanted to see if anyone has questions before we jump on to the next section. All right, doesn't look like anyone's chatting, but like I said before, I know Tess and Brendan joined in since we kicked it off, but if you have questions on anything, whether it's about the presentation, the individual project, whatever, just feel free to toss that in the chat, your assignments, and we'll get to that throughout and at the end. All right, moving along, we're now diving into chapter 8, which is on contracts and contract consideration. So with contracts, this goes back to that symbiotic relationship when it comes to creating these agreements. You need to be very selective, very direct when you are solidifying arrangements with partners that you're working with, whether it's a vendor, whether it's a catering restaurant, whether it's a volunteer group. It's critical to document this through contract language to formalize these relationships and dealings compared to just going on word. So in the past, I've worked with a lot of companies that say, oh yeah, we're good for this, we're good for that. Something happens in the economic realm and oh, hey, we can't give you that money anymore. So making sure that you have it upfront to verify deals, that's huge, because that way they're then going to be responsible to pay you the money that you're looking for in that case, or providing the service that you're agreeing to. And really the key things with contract regulation and laws, these are in place to protect your legal interest, to drive you as well as the vendor, the partner, whoever it is, to operate ethically, to provide a safe environment. That's very important nowadays with events, and to protect your financial investment. So like I said, or going to the example for the Gus Macker Festival, I run this independently. So if sponsors back out, now we're talking, this could be my money in play. I personally don't want to pay for a basketball tournament. So making sure I have those arrangements collected in hand, signed early on, guarantees that money is coming in. So with contract law, like I said, those are those relationships between you, the vendor, the facility, whatever it is. And with that, when it comes to, contract considerations to be legal, there are 5 key components. First off, an offer has to go out there. What are you offering? What's the promise? What's the price tag? When's it happening? What are the core details of that? Offer pretty straightforward. In return for the offer, there is an acceptance or a negotiation, reoffer, and then comes the consideration stage. That's when they're like, all right, we're good. We're signing off on this. What's going to be exchanged? We will give you $10,000. We're going to be the sponsor of the 18th hole for a hole-in-one contest during the golf scramble, whatever it is, so that's the consideration, is the exchange, the dealing in the middle. Also, to make the contract legit, they have to be under capacity. Or capacity has to come into play. So often, I've heard of deals taking place on the golf course, on corporate visits, that kind of stuff, where alcohol is involved. Technically, if alcohol was involved, that doesn't always lead to a binding deal. So make sure that everything is appropriate and of right mind when these decisions are being finalized. And also, it's got to be legal. Can't have legal dealings built in within that. Oh, next page, I lost my mouse. Halfway done. We're going to fly through these next few sections. Different types of contracts, partnerships, between all these different, for sport management and facility management, at least, there's contracts between the facility, between the media, between the food and beverage providers, security. Every entity to put this on, contracts in play. If you're working with the volunteer group to take tickets at an athletic event at your high school, contracts in play for them to provide the volunteers. And there's a bunch of different contracts, but kind of self-explanatory, depending on what type of event that you're talking about. So within contracts, there are 3 keywords that I do want you to consider. This will come in play with some of your events as well as sponsorships, but first off is an exclusivity clause. So if you think about Jackson College's campus, next time you're there, look at what soda they're serving. Do they have Pepsi? Do they have Coke? Chances are they don't have both. At Western Michigan University, at Michigan State, they have exclusive arrangements with Coca-Cola. Because of that, you see the Coca-Cola name everywhere. You never see Pepsi. You don't see Faygo. That's that exclusive arrangement that they have. Another obvious one is if you look at sports teams, what's on the jersey? So MLB, they created this mega deal with the exclusive rights of Nike. So Nike paid a freaking ton of money to Major League Baseball. I don't even remember how many years it's for, but guaranteed Nike's logo is on every jersey. not just the jersey of the players, but the jersey of the fans, the retail items for the fans, anything associated with that team, that is a field worthy product, Nike. So that's where that exclusivity cause, what that kind of means. If you just think about those examples, that makes a lot of sense. For local events, maybe when you're working with sponsors, it's like, for our biggest sponsor, we could have 3 top tier sponsors. We're not going to have 3 insurance companies, 3 banks, 3 car dealerships. If you are County National Bank and you sign on, we promise you're going to be the only bank at this level. That is exclusivity, and that matters when it comes to local sponsorships in many cases. Clearance are really just the clear elements built into permissions, production of the product, the different rules that come there. And waivers are documents that are very, 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 very common in any competitive arena for a special event. So if you run a 5K, you sign a waiver. If you do a 3-on-3 basketball tournament, you sign a waiver. If you do a golf scramble, in the past, you might not have signed a waiver, but now probably going to sign a waiver. Why? Because COVID is out there. So golf courses don't want to be the center of media attention that they were the cause of this outbreak and now they're getting sued. Nope. They signed this waiver, so they are not to blame for this. So this is where you for your different events that you're planning, think about how waivers are going to come into play in terms of protection and where some of your costs might come surrounding the insurance that does protect against that. Leading to the negotiation stage when you're building these contracts, obviously, like I already said, get it in writing. Don't negotiate against yourself. Early on in event management, I always thought it's like, I want a sponsor so bad. I'll give them more tickets, we'll give them more visibility, more access, and this is awesome. They signed on, we gave away 100 tickets for this event and got $10,000 out of it. Well, if you talk yourself into this bad deal, you're kind of stuck with that bad deal. And come year 5 of the event, you're like, geez, I really wish I could take back or render this. But the company, they're like, well, why would we give you this money or more money if you're going back on the promise that grandfathered in? So when it comes to that negotiation, only give what you are comfortable giving and that you will be comfortable giving 3 years down the road. Big thing there. Of course, conversations are key. Nowadays, it's easy just to exchange emails and, pitch, propose, but you set up a phone call, get to know what the organization's looking for, what they value. And when it comes to the establishment of media contracts, as well as sponsorship agreements, as well as food sales, that conversation can be very impactful to make sure that, one, this is a good event for them, but more importantly for you as the event manager, that you're working with good people. So it's always good to have those conversations before you sign any binding agreements. Lastly, we have the attorney's perspective of this. And in a lot of the events that I work with, and for the events that everyone's pitching in this class, it'd be pretty rare for you to work with an attorney. However, if you are producing waivers, if you are producing different things with insurance, if there's certain clauses in it, it might be good to work with one. But that's when, of course, there's big expense that comes into play, but attorneys do really help protect the validity of this. So when we talk about all the major sports teams have a legal counsel. They have lawyers that work for them. Very different than if you're hosting a 7-on-7 football tournament at a high school. Yes, the high school has an attorney, and that's where, the high school already has this stuff in writing and play, so you can quickly get a contract out there compared to you having to go rogue and find your own attorney. Regarding different sorts of legislation, the 2 big ones that the book calls out that I want everyone just to be aware of are the Americans with Disabilities Act, as well as OSHA. So the Disabilities Act was a pretty monumental change that has really enhanced the festival sporting event experience for everyone, creating barrier-free accommodations for accessibility. How is someone who might be visually impaired or physically handicapped, disabled, able to experience the event? How can they get to their seats? So when you think about the layout of concessions at college sports arena, when you think about the restrooms, when you think about how they physically walked and got to the event, all that stuff is in consideration, not just even at the event, but at the partner facilities too, at the restaurants where they're hosting events at. All this is imperative. With OSHA, OSHA, pretty common for all industries. It's basically making sure people are building, operating in a safe way. Federal guidelines built in there. So if you're hosting a festival, if there's risers out there, got to make sure that they're secured appropriately compared to people getting on them, because I know there's been a lot of events where the use of risers platforms go awry based on fans breaching ground. Also, forgot this was a little longer than I thought, but with technology, there's a lot more rules and regulations out there. So for basically every event that is proposed in the class, you're going to need to collect payment somehow as an event manager. Are you using a third-party site such as Eventbrite, Square? If you're hosting a larger scale event like at Ford Field, how do sites like Ticketmaster and StubHub, Flash Seats come into play? Just a good thing to explore, because with this, when you are working with these external parties, there's more things to consider when establishing those different deals and relationships. That's definitely the wrong way. With that, any questions on Chapter 8? Really flew through that section. I know contract law isn't the most entertaining element of sport management, but it's something that should be considered. If you have any questions, I'll give you 10 seconds to start typing. Tyler's good. Very exciting. Tyler's always good. Tyler's been good for 2 semesters with me. I like it. But let me know if you have anything. Otherwise, I will dive on to the next. All right. Tyler's laughing. I like it. All right. Chapter 9. Going to risk management and items to consider there. Risks, obvious definition or understanding. What are you going to do to control risks at your event? So many things can come to play, from weather to alcohol to the overall design of traffic flow. All these things need to be considered right off the bat. So you got to be diligent when identifying those risks, those hazards, and most importantly, you have to create a plan to manage them. So one of the very first things that I got into with the Gus Macker tournament, we're working with different sponsors and entities in town. And I was probably working on the event for no more than 2 months. And this is 14 months before they brought it here. One of the potential sponsors said, yeah, before we sponsor, we want to see your emergency management plan. And I'm like, excuse me, what do you mean? And for them, if we didn't have a plan for active shooters, for heat, for a random crazy person in a car to drive through our basketball courts, if we didn't have that in play, they wouldn't consider it for sponsorship. So for me, that was a very educational moment, because I'm like, wow, now, yeah. So my emergency plan was the freaking police that we worked with in the fire department. I was going to call them. Hey, here's my plan. Hey, Officer Hit, come over here. This parent's yelling at another guy, right? So that's what I thought it was. Or if someone broke their leg, got to get a hold of the EMT that's on site. Those are part of the emergency plan, but that's not the full execution. So as event managers, and without a doubt in facility management, an emergency plan is imperative when it comes to putting an event together. So with this, there are different areas of the plan. There's specific to crisis, like that active shooter, emergency action, different layers. If fire were to come into play, risk management, going to Gus Macker, the spacing of courts away from curbs, minimizing the amount of barriers, that kind of stuff. So part of the process, first off, identification, look at everything at your facility, everything at your venue, everything you're bringing in. What could go wrong? Just look at it that way. And it's like, well, if you're hosting an event with alcohol sales, got to remember people who drink a few beverages, they might not be able to walk straight. So if you think, if I don't walk straight, what could I run into and could topple over and could fall over this person and crush them? Those are clear concerns for many sport venues. So that's where you see more fixed objects in play and minimal barriers on the concourse areas. So look around and just think, what could happen, any given day? Also, let's figure this out. Let's build a matrix in terms of, I spelled matrix wrong. In terms of these issues, what's a priority one? What's a minor issue? What should we consider? And that's where you're going to determine where your money has to go to minimize those different risks. And with that comes the SOP, which is a version of an emergency plan, but it's basically the standard procedures, standard operating procedures. If something were to happen, this is who we're going to get a hold of. This is how we're going to respond. This is how we're going to do it, blah, blah, blah. So with the establishment of this plan, there's three concepts, and that's the DIM process: developing, implementing, managing. Don't really have to elaborate on that. Just think of the words: developing the plan, implementing it. How you can do that? You're working with staff, you're working with contract vendors, you're working with whoever it is. And how are you going to manage it internally, ahead of time, during the event, post-event, and all that? So one of my favorite resources in the text, on page 42, there's a pretty sweet matrix that lines that up. A good thing to check out just to understand how some organizations do this. And just to be very clear, with your individual projects, you are not doing anything with a risk management plan. We don't have 30 weeks to, accomplish this class. I want to stick to the fun stuff, but this is what you do need to take into consideration just at a high level with the event, with the events that you're bringing to town. All right. So when it comes to these risks, there are an abundance of threats, but I believe there's 10 key ones I'm going to focus on. First off is medical attention. What do event managers need on site? So is there going to be EMTs on site? Are there going to be firefighters, police officers? Common ones, you got to have the basics, no matter, if you're a business, you got to have first aid. So is there going to be elements of 8 people with AED certifications or equipment there? Are there people trained to provide CPR? Any competitive sporting event, all 3 of those boxes are checked. For festivals, all 3 are checked. For a normal small scale sit down dinner, probably not checked for more of a nostalgia tourism event, right? You have heat related issues. Thinking about the summer, there's a lot of issues hosting an event in the summer. At the Art, Beer, and Wine Festival, I know it's not a sporting event. Every year we have 10 to 15 people drop out just because of heat. Well, not just because of heat, mainly because they've had 10 drinks, but heat tends to put that over the top, and ambulances are shuttling people off all day. Big concern with weather-related issues. Thinking more on the stage of severe weather, in the Michigan area, obviously thunderstorms in the spring, potential for tornadoes, ice in the winter come into play, but all the layers that happened in the coastal cities out west, what happens if there's fires? What happens if there's floods, a hurricane? A lot of elements we're pretty lucky that we don't even have to think about in Michigan come to play once you head southeast and west. Bloodborne pathogens, this goes back to OSHA. There's very strict precautions in play. You just have to be able to treat that and have the personnel there if blood, comes to view. With equipment and supervision of equipment, making sure that the appropriate employees, volunteers are using that type of stuff, making sure it's protected as well. I know that at college events, college students during major events such as the NCAA tournament. Try to get into anything inside and outside of the arena. So make sure that those forklifts, that those scissor jacks, whatever they are, all that. If you have an event, make sure those are protected in situations like that. Insurance is key as well. So make sure that you do have the coverage to cover everything in case it goes wrong. Insurance isn't necessarily that expensive for many events, but it has to happen. All you need is one person to get injured or one bad thing to occur. And if you don't have insurance, you could go to jail, right? Just got to think about how the liability all adds up with that. Food handling, that's a whole realm in itself. But if you're, putting on an event, working with a cross-country team to sell food, are they selling Gatorade, Snickers bars, pre-packaged food? That's cool. Otherwise, there's more layers that come into play if they have to heat a product. So even if you're just doing hot dogs, you got to go through the health department to do that. So some things that are often overlooked for smaller events or community-based things. Drones are a emerging concern. I've actually been in an event where a drone crashed into a crowd. For me, it was a pretty remarkable thing to witness. Happy I wasn't hit with the rotating blades, but drones are causing more issues in terms of destruction of events, becoming a nuisance. A lot can go wrong with that. Natural disasters, and then human trafficking. You might think that's not that big of a deal in many ways, but when you think about events in major cities, Jackson's very different than hosting an event in Cleveland, very different than Cincinnati and Detroit. So there's a lot of things that happen to this tourism angle when people are in populous places at the same time. There are things that we like to believe don't happen near events like that unfortunately occur all the time. And when you look at the Olympics, that is when it comes down to the Olympics, that's in my view the biggest issue with the whole thing, the disgusting amount of human trafficking that follows mega events across the world. Just something to know. Regarding crowd control and crowd management, crowd control, if you think about the definition in different ways, what you're going to do to funnel these people. Think about the partitions that drive you through the metal detectors at Comerica Park. Think about the barriers that they have sectored if you go see a concert at Little Caesars Arena. So that's the elements that they have on that side, while crowd management is the overall facilitation of security, staff, volunteers, controlling the amount of tickets, figuring out the layout of the facility. So control is more of those fixed variables, while those management plans factor in the event as a whole and the different dynamics and movement that come into play with those. Final slide of the night is negligence. So this is basically unintentional wrongdoing that results in industry, something you might not have even considered. So really, to prove negligence, straight out of the book, you gotta, just think about, if based in the situation, if how is a person operating appropriately, how you should act based on social norms. Was there a breach? Should the venue have provided something that they didn't? Based on that, if the venue should have done something differently, was a cause in play? Was there something that shows the event manager, the director, the facility was at fault for this happening? And then what's the damage? Emotional, physical, whatever. This is where a lot of money comes into play and has obviously a very detrimental impact on events. Easy way to avoid having to spend that money and having that negative impact is taking care of the stuff in advance. Anywhere from double checking, securing the lighting that's hanging above the field house floor, to doing multiple walkthroughs with very different demographics to make sure a kid is experiencing it the same way as a elderly person. just got to make sure nothing goes unnoticed. And with that, I don't have any other updates or content that I want covered. A lot of stuff in the quiz was talked about in there. It's just elaborate a little further in the quiz, but was wondering if anyone has questions on this, the recent individual project 2 submission, what's expected project 3, or anything else for the week ahead.